is Tarik Talk. Your host, Tarik Mendez, takes you on a journey with guests from all around the world. Broadcasting around the world. Around the world. This is Tarik Talk.
All right, guys, today I'm here with Marin. A lot of people know her as Supermrin. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thank you so much. Glad to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me in your beautiful studio. I'm so excited to talk about all about your work, creative process, and all that. Before we start, can you share your Instagram account and your website, please?
Absolutely. My Instagram is Supermrin. That's SUPERMRIN. And my website is www.streetlight.space. That's STREETLIGHT.SPACE.
Perfect, thank you. We're at the Silver Art Project. We're going to be, diving a little bit into all about your art. So do you want to start telling us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yes. I'm originally from India.
Okay.
I moved to the US in 2015. So I can't believe it's been 10 years
Oh, wow.
this year. It's actually my anniversary.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. And I spent about a decade practicing architecture in Delhi before I moved into fine art. So in all of my work, you'll see a lot of connections, both in terms of tools and materials, but also in terms of conceptual critiques of modernist and contemporary architecture.
Wow.
And I was in grad school at the San Francisco Art Institute, and I was working pretty large scale, pretty sort of like immersive installations. I was doing a lot of pretty complex mold making. I was working with very toxic materials, rubbers, polyurethanes, that kind of stuff. And I just wasn't feeling, there was like something was amiss. And it was actually during the pandemic that I started to, I didn't have a science background at all, but I started to experiment with and participate in a community of open source material scientists. And I started learning more about biology, and that eventually led to the kind of work that I make now. And so the move from architecture to art has been a big part of my personal and professional journey. Also, the move from India to the US has been a really interesting experience. I've been fortunate to have traveled pretty extensively within the US. I've lived in San Francisco, I've lived in New York, and I've also lived in Ohio, in Cincinnati. And I actually teach sculpture and interdisciplinary practice at the University of Cincinnati presently. So I don't know, there's been a geography and place is such an important part of my experience, both with architecture and with art, and having this opportunity to really understand different cultures, different places, being embedded in different communities, I think has been sort of the narrative unfolding of my life, which I don't know how that happened, but I just get to engage with a really diverse range of people through my experience.
Oh wow, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. You said you were an architect. How did you make the switch from architect to artist? And were you always an artist? Like growing up, were you always like drawing and sketching?
I was always an artist. And actually when I was 2 years old, so we come from a small farm in central India, in Madhya Pradesh. My grandparents had a sort of small piece of land where they had mango orchards, and I would spend summer holidays in the fields learning and working with the women in the fields. And my mother, in those days, sort of languages was one of the few ways that Indian women could sort of travel and study and experience. So there was a lot of jobs as like translators or teachers where they could still raise families. And so my mom, when she was 17, she got a scholarship to study in Paris. and she learned French, and then she eventually went on to become a French teacher. So when I was 2 years old, we lived in France for about 4 years, and she was studying African writers writing in French. So how they use the French language for the decolonial movement in Northwest Africa. But she spent so much time in libraries, like at various museums. And so when I was really young, it was just the most incredible experience to be able to understand art pre-verbally. So I was too young to actually intellectualize it. And I would just have these, and I remember them very vividly, like seeing the fountains outside the Centre Pompidou and just being mesmerized by the movement, the form, the sculpture, the scale. And I think the rest is sort of history that never really went away. I was always interested in design. I never thought it was art per se, and I never had the intention of being an artist. But I was always a creative person, and I was always interested. I love to visualize things, and drawing was sort of like the base practice that I've always had through my life.
It's amazing. And do you think those early experiences kind of have like maybe subconsciously helped you to become like the artist you are today in a way?
Definitely. I feel like in my life, the museum actually saved my life. There was a lot of various challenges in the family, in society, in sort of being immigrants at various points of my life, that I think for me, art and ideas and these objects that I saw around me gave me a sense that I could do anything, and we could be anything, and that there was something outside of the sort of like the rigid or narrow views that sometimes society imposes on women in India, and on us, that we impose on ourselves in general as well.
Absolutely. And I just want to go into your work a little bit. Do you think like those, you said like the, like being on the farm, and like I'm guessing you had the experience to like touch things and play with things and like, divulge and everything about like the eco stuff. Do you think that has kind of like influenced you in a way, like to how you were a kid, like playing with all of that, and now you're kind of like, because I saw that you use grass to make a few of your sculptures. Do you think a little bit like it's like a full circle moment that you had that experience and now you're able to kind of like, touch a little bit in that and then use that for your sculptures today?
I remember very vividly learning as a girl on the farm, learning how to make clay by just taking soil, and we would put it in a plastic bag, put some water in it, and bury it underground for a week, and then dig it back up, and it would become like a really beautiful clay, and then we would make little clay ovens with that clay, and then we would roast corn on those ovens and eat it. And it was like, I must have been like, I don't know, 5 years old or something, but it was like the most fantastic idea in my mind, that you could just go to the soil and cultivate this entire cycle from something so raw and basic. And it's kind of funny now that my work has done this full circle, where my mom jokes and she was like, Mrin is still on the fields, and the name of my project is also Field. And as an architect, I was part of this moment in India, in Delhi, where real estate was exploding, and overnight the fields were being transformed into like large glass skyscrapers. And when you see that raw earth being excavated and you feel the wounds of the earth, I'm really sort of always thinking about that relationship between the built and the unbuilt, the raw materials from the earth that can form a full cycle and can sustain us, but then can go back to sustain other life forms. And so, in a way, I feel like it took so many years of a journey for me to understand my roots and like what I learned from my family, my history, and all of the women around me.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. It's kind of like how the universe kind of conspired for you to have these experiences and like live in different cities, experience like France as a little girl, and then have the, you know, the biological knowledge when you're a kid to now be able to create these beautiful pieces. And I think it's so interesting, like the structure. There's always like a structure with so much detail. That's probably your architecture background. That's why I love, you know, seeing the work in person and speaking to the artists, because, you know, certain things starts to fit. You're like, oh, it wasn't just me. That it makes sense that it's like that. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your creative process? Like, how do you come up with these ideas? Do you like go into nature looking to get inspired, or do you just get inspired by little things every day and you make like a little mental note for future projects? How does that work for you?
I think it's like I see other realities and dimensions, and nothing that I make is like, I'm not taking a photograph of the landscape and then trying to draw it accurately. I'm really thinking about these as certain kinds of organisms. And I'm thinking about like how each of us grow. Like, what does growth mean? How much do you sometimes have to like hurt yourself to grow some other part of yourself? How does society, how does life form us and shape us into who we are? And what is our self-agency in that? And so if you look at my sculptures, there's always some sense of like something grew itself. There's like some kind of artificial intelligence, not in the way we think about it today, but this sort of like a different intelligence, a non-human, or maybe more like primitive intelligence at play. And so I feel like the images just come. And once I start, it's sort of, I embody that creature and I'm thinking about like, how would I grow? How could I grow? And that's how the pieces make themselves. There's a lot of layers and building and layering and layering. And so just in terms of technically to explain what you're actually looking at right now, because it can be confusing, especially in an image. This, for example, is a tensile structure made from fallen maple trees from this landscaping firm on the outskirts of Cincinnati, Ohio. So I'm interested in these like plant wastes that are actually grown for domestic consumption. So they're like, is it nature? Is it a commodity? That question is always triggered. And then I make these interior sort of like skeletal structures from those plants. And then I do sort of like a complex mold making process. And I cook my bioplastic, this green material that you're looking at. It sort of feels like vegan leather.
Oh, wow.
And I cook it on my stovetop.
That's so cool.
In giant pots.
Oh, wow.
And I have in my studio, I have like a little sort of almost like a little commercial kitchen set up where I make the materials.
Oh, wow.
And so one of the most exciting things about my work for me is that I get to research history of a land. I get to research and understand communities and people from a place. And often when I work site specifically, all of my materials are from that place.
Wow.
And so they become sort of like memorials to like every grass species is different in different landscapes. The different species will give like slightly different tones and colors and textures. It sort of becomes this almost like a memorial to a land.
That's amazing. So when you create like a specific piece on site, it's not a prepared piece. You create from everything you get from that area. That's amazing. Wow, that's such detail, like amazing detailed work.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
You know, when I first saw this piece, I thought it reminded me of like humans, like our life on Earth, and like what's next, like rebirth, reincarnation. You know, it's like
really? Like how?
Because I saw like a body. You know, like whatever you go. At least for me, like whenever I go through difficult times, I always go to the ocean. or I always go to the mountains. Like I have to touch soil. I have to like meditate on grass. You know what I mean? So it's like I feel like when you do, I get like goosebumps. When I do that, like I feel like there's like an extension part of my body within the earth. And when I don't, if I'm not in nature for a long time, then I feel like I get like, you know, like, I don't know, like my frequency gets like distorted, you know, like black and white TV of the fuzz. And it's just so amazing because it's like, you know, we are the earth and the earth is us. We just forget, you know?
We just forget.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I loved how you put that because I'm the same way where I'm a water person. I love the beach and I've spent a lot of time scuba diving and understanding different kinds of ecosystems and ecologies. And there's this sense that I'm interested in my work that like when you look at it in one moment, it seems botanical, but in another moment, it seems human, but in another moment, it seems sort of like coral-like. And so, I love that space where we always trying to make an image in our minds and you start to see something. It's like clouds. You see something and then it shifts and then you see something else and then it shifts. And in a lot of my work, I'm always aspiring to sort of like titillate you just into to words and image, but then it's actually nothing that you can recognize.
That's amazing because your work on the image is one thing, you know? It's very like abstract, very modern, very cool. But in person, there's like, at least for me, there's like an emotional connect where it's like relate. You know, it just, for me, this makes me feel like we're the earth. So like we live here, we die here, then maybe we come back again, you know, and that's the vibe I get. It's so like peaceful. You know, I could just like, if this was in a museum, I probably would sit there, be there for like an hour or two, just admiring, sketching it. This is really beautiful. And it has such an energy to it as well.
You know, I just think that like materials have energy and often we spend so much time trying to like control them and be like, you know, that's the problem with plastics or, you know, we've tried to design this perfect superhuman material, but then it loses its soul. And what I love about working with natural materials is that they have a life force. There is a sculpture dead or alive? I don't know, you know? And I think it was the same with architecture. There's like a beauty of a natural stone or marble that no tile can ever really replicate, in my opinion. I come from that philosophy of thinking. But I think that way about art too, weirdly, is that it becomes special when you know that maybe it's not forever, or when you know that it's like it's holding the story of a place or a site.
As you previously mentioned that you do scuba diving, which is something I did it as a kid, but now I'm kind of like going back to it again. The best feeling for me, it's like realizing we're so small on this huge planet. Like we're like a little neuron in a cell, and it's amazing. You know, that's like what it feels like. I don't know. It tells, I think, the spectator that, you know, your time here is not too long. You know, it's like, it's very, very beautiful. And I'm so excited to be here. Thank you. And then how do like ideas come to you? Do they come to you like at nighttime, in the daytime? Do you kind of like strive to like get ideas, or they just come to you like spontaneous?
I think so. I spent most of my 20s, very honestly, doing a lot of work on myself and breaking a lot of my bad patterns or habits or childhood traumas. And I feel like it allowed me to sort of become more myself and be like brave about who I wanted to be in the world and not feel like I had to be like everybody else. And for me, it's only when I'm doing that consistently, like I'm taking care of this person, the ideas just come. Usually, like early morning first thing is like when I'm the smartest. I get dumber throughout the day.
I'm like that too, yeah. I'm the most productive in the morning.
But
too.
often I like wake up knowing, okay, this is like, I've visualized this in a dream or something. And it just needs to, this is what needs to happen.
That's so cool. And then are you able to like remember the idea, or do you have to write it down, or otherwise you forget forever? Like, are you an artist that's able to remember it? Or do you have to like
I
quickly find a
remember
notepad?
the feeling of it, even if I lose some of the details. I often just remember like a sort of a starting point. It's never the ending point. And I think that's the beauty of materials, is that I can start with my imagination, but it is like the pushback that the material gives that actually makes the work more interesting than I could have conceived.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, that image is like the starting point. And then once I start, it's like what you said, it's actually just about like, I'm often thinking pretty ritualistically about like, how do I transfer this energy force into this material, and how is it giving me that energy force back?
Wow.
So I think that like without materials, it's like a castle in the sky. Like the material gives that response that makes it tangible on the earth.
Oh, wow. And then when you think of like a sculpture design and you start to create it, does it come out exactly as you plan, or is it like a very organic, spontaneous process where you kind of let, you know, the branches that I saw you use sometimes, do you let that like take you like on a journey, or you kind of like strict because you're an architect and you have that background, the way you like, you want it to look how you want it to look like, or do you just enjoy the process?
I mean, it's a bit of both. Especially for larger scale works, you need to be pretty organized when making large scale sculpture or architectural scale work. This piece, for example, the base of it was actually modeled on Rhino on 3D software. So I actually use a lot of pretty complex computer-aided design moves as just for like the mold making process of the work. But then again, once the branches come in, once the materials are in my hand, I give myself the permission to like keep expanding and growing and transforming. So yeah, it often starts very precise, and it's more, I would say, more than like trying to be precise throughout. What I'm really trying to do with material research, with structural research, within all the areas of the R&D for my work, is more about setting up a system where I can have flexibility through the process as I go. So how can I like get the base right that is still going to allow me all of these different options down the road as the work progresses? A piece like this, for example, took me about like 2 months to make, which is a pretty long time. Like I don't make a lot of pieces every year. I make maybe like, if I can do 10 or 15 pieces in a year, especially at this scale, that's like pretty ambitious for me, because there's like many parts of the mold making and sort of like complicated moves, and then cooking the grass and getting the materials and working with communities. So it's sort of like, it is very process oriented. And I feel like if I have the right process, the outcome is the right one.
Yeah. Wow. And then when you're cooking the grass, how is that process for you? Because to me, it seems like, I think cooking is very therapeutic. So is that process like, do you get excited? Like, are you already having the visions of where you're going to create, or are you like in the moment focused on cooking the grass?
I'm a bit spoiled these days, because I've learned that I can freeze the material and then reuse it, like re-warm it up when I need it. So I actually have a freezer, and I need freezers as like my storage process. So when I'm making material, it's very one track. Usually it's more about where I'm sourcing the grass from. So a lot of the samples here that you see are actually from the Greenwood Cemetery. And I have a sort of ongoing partnership with them where, because there's someone mowing the lawn every day at Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn. Cool. And so I would say the grass is more about the site itself. So I go, I talk to the mowers, they tell me where they are, I take bags, and as they're mowing the lawn, I'm like having conversations with them and like collecting some of the waste clippings that they're gonna send away, and then taking them to my kitchen, and then first have to like boil the grass to get rid of any of the toxins. Then I wash it actually in my washing machine.
No way, you can do that?
Yeah, way. I double bag it. I use nut bags and then like the laundry bags on top of that. So it smells like gold. It comes these thin, beautiful, like cellulose fibers. It's like such a precious material.
That's so cool.
But it takes like 2 days to make a batch of grass. So it's you just have to do, one step after the other. You can't rush any of it. It's sort of like you're working on a cauldron with fire, so it has a little bit of that like witchy vibe, but it's much more grounded than that because it smells of a farm the whole time. So it's like a weird process.
I have a question, just me being nosy. Sorry if it's too much, but you said that you grabbed this from the cemetery. Do you like cleanse it with like sage? Or,
I actually do have, I use a lot of natural essential oils.
Okay, so it takes the bad juju away.
But I think of it more as like a good juju. It's like,
it's like literally the circle of life.
It's the circle of life. So cool. And it's like that gratitude for the abundance of the earth.
That's so cool. I was like, because my next question is going to make sense, but hearing you talk about like, learning about your work, I was like thinking to myself, I was like, wow, when I die, I want her to make a sculpture out of me if that's possible. And that would be so cool to like, that's, I know it's like a wild thought, but it's really cool.
No, I've actually had other people request this from me, is that they would like to be like buried in a sort of like a bioplastic pod, and that then the materials decompose with the bodies. And I think it's really, a lot of people are doing like more sustainable forms of burials than coffins, because wood just takes so long to decompose.
Absolutely,
but it's like funny that actually I get that question quite often.
Because I was like, this is so cool for like, your family to come, meditate, talk to you, have like a visual, just look at the ground. And is there like if you could do any project in the future, not worrying about budget or any restriction, do you have anything in mind that you would like to do?
I'm actually like working towards, I'm like working on a bunch of proposals, so fingers crossed for me. But from the onset of this body of work has been this desire in me to work at architectural scale, outdoors, in a landscape where the sculptures become a rewilding tool for a sort of like a traditional lawn. And so a site like a manicured lawn or a golf course or something like that kind of, or like a sports stadium where they're actually trying to rewild the landscape and plant new species of plants and ecosystems. And so, in my vision, I do outdoor large scale works that as the art decomposes, there's seeds inside and it triggers new things to grow. And so you could imagine this with like some leaves growing from some parts and some parts breaking down.
Fabulous. When I first saw your work before I saw that you were an architect, I did see like a structural like frame to it. And I thought, oh, maybe, perhaps she had some knowledge in that. But I also thought like, how they do like for Art Basel, they do a collab every year. I thought like, once I learned that this is like biodegradable, I thought maybe like this kind of like taking over a skyscraper, like a fungus type. And then the part that's on the ground, you bury it. And I thought, like when I learned that you're an architect, I was like, wow, that would be such a cool thing. It's like this takes over in the skyscraper. You know, that'd
I
be
mean,
so cool.
it's such a dream. Like even these arched pieces back there, I often see these like huge windows, arched windows in buildings, and to be able to take over the entire facade of a building with every arch having the grasses and trees that have taken over a concrete site.
Yeah.
That would be like a dream come true.
Yeah, because like when I first came in earlier today in the studio, I thought, oh my God, these like blown up, like, you know, 4 or 5 floor like height with the shadows and the sun going in between. Oh, it will be like phenomenal.
Thank you.
You know?
I also think that it's a question of resolution. So like trees of different scales and sizes, because I'm incorporating grass and trees, the natural tendency would be to go to a specific scale or size, you know, so like to be able to use full size maple trees and make a sculpture from
That's
that.
so cool. And like, oh my God, I just like thinking now, you traveling around the world doing these installations, like fitting, as you said, you take the source from where you are. That would be so cool.
I actually did a project in Switzerland in 2023.
Congrats.
Thank you. And it was the largest sculptures that I've done so far. I was there for 2 months, and all of the materials were sourced on site. And I was in this sort of like vineyard chateau, and I reused the winemaking facilities to make bioplastic.
That's so cool.
And I got all the grass from the classical French gardens of the chateau. And 1 week before I got there, I mean, it was extremely tragic. And there was a freak tornado that blew down, razed 150,000 trees.
Oh my gosh.
In the city where Le Corbusier was born.
Oh my God.
And it was sort of a climate change related freak hurricane.
Yeah, because I was going to say Switzerland doesn't have
it. Doesn't. It was like, it was devastating. And so I got there. It was so sad and freaky to see this devastation. And I pivoted the entire project to account for that and sort of participated in the community cleanup for all of that. And eventually the sculptures that I made were using the fallen trees from that calamity.
And were you able to have access to like different trees that perhaps you wouldn't have been able to had they not gone through the hurricane?
I mean, I used a lot of the European linden, which I've never seen here in the US, a lot of which fell down in the storms. But yeah, it's like a weird project sometimes because so much of this is in conversation with sort of disasters, death, cycles. And there's some parts of the cycles that are just very sad.
Yeah. You know, like this makes me realize like how greedy the world can be, and it really puts us humans, I think, at least for me, in place. Like, you know, you'll probably have like 70 years here. Life is not forever. Don't think too much, you know, because we're probably going to look like this underground, you know. So it's a really, really beautiful work. And changing a little bit of the topic, I have a question. If you could have dinner with anybody, any artist, dead or alive, who would it be?
Yeah. It would be my dream to have a meeting and a dinner or a drink with Christo and Jean-Claude.
Oh, wow.
I remember when I was in undergrad listening to an otherwise pretty boring art history lecture on contemporary art until we got to the slides of Christo, and it was just like, it was an overnight change in my understanding of what scale means, what is possible in the world. I don't know. It's like there's a way in which they were able to transcend maintain the autonomy as artists, but do much weirder projects than artists usually try. Another artist that I would love to have a drink with is Pierre Huyghe. But a lot of the big installation artists have been my people that I've looked up to as a young artist. I think now, like, I would love to have a drink with the artist Mrinalini Mukherjee, who shares my name, my first name, who I think she passed away in 2015. She had a retrospective at called Phenomenal Nature. I think was it at the Met? It was an incredible show, and she was an Indian artist working with hemp fiber, and she weaves these incredible complex sculptures that sort of hang from the ceiling. They're like gorgeous. So I know you only asked for one, but that was 3.
No. It's my fault. It's 3 or 4. It's up to you, but it's amazing. And if you could own any artwork by anybody in this world, I don't know if the answer is going to be the same. Who would it be?
Oh, own an artwork. What would I want to own? I've never thought about owning work because I feel like work should be seen by everybody and belongs to the museum.
You're the first person to say that. That's so nice
really?
of you. Yeah.
I feel like that's what I love about institutions is that many people get to share something.
You're the first person in this podcast that has said that.
I would love like a Calatrava pencil drawing original.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
Yeah,
wow.
I would love any architecture blueprints. And I love that too, because then you're not owning the actual work. The work is out there for the world, but you get to have like a little part of that.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so sweet of you. And then speaking of the future, do you want to share any projects or future projects you have coming up?
Yeah, I'm working with an organization called GenSpace, which is essentially the world's first community biology lab. It's in Brooklyn, and I've been a member of the community for a pretty long time now, since the start of this body of work. And a lot of the community there has helped develop my materials in different ways and provide a lot of feedback and support. And so I'm actually working on a grant right now with them, with the Anonymous Was a Woman Environmental Art Grant, to study my recipes and develop a spec sheet using different scientific testing methods, so that I then have a full data sheet on like exactly what is the composition, the chemistry, the strength, the biodegradability, the light fastness, all of the sort of still unknown components of this material. And I'm working towards a solo exhibition next year at the Western Gallery in Cincinnati, Ohio. Upstairs is going to be the artist Diana Al-Hadid, who is like a huge inspiration in my work. I love her work, and so it'll be an honor to have her upstairs and have this solo exhibition downstairs. So yeah, it's going to be a whole new body of work, and that's keeping me pretty busy in the studio these days. But I'm also simultaneously developing those outdoor protocols for the outdoor sculptures.
In your day-to-day life, are you always getting inspired by your surroundings, or like are you able to kind of like, let's say like tune out the noise and just like focus on your task, or are you like 24 hours, like would you describe yourself as a creative, like you're getting inspired by little things and getting ideas here and there?
It's hard to tell. Yeah, definitely. I think conversations, I think being here with all of these artists that are incredible artists around me, being in the studio and having those moments where we like look at each other's work and we're like thinking or talking together, or like, I mean, the view that I have in the studio right now is just so phenomenal. And there's just something about, even today, like sometimes when it's sunny, all of this will be like backlit, all of the work, and it looks incredible. But even on a foggy day like today, that quality
So
of the
much
light
mystery. Yeah.
is so powerful.
Yeah.
I think, there's who knows where everything comes from, but there's always something invigorating about the world and about experiencing new experiences.
Especially you.
Yeah. And I think for me, travel is like a fundamental part of how I've learned how to be a person and how I've learned other ways of being, that just like what my parents taught me is not the only way, or that different cultures have such different ways of processing the world around them.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful. And I feel like, you know, like this time in your life, it's like the universe put you here for a specific reason, you know. I feel like you're so in tune into, as we said, like frequency, energy. Now you said you did so much like self-work in your 20s. So I feel like everything, it's like leading up to now. So I definitely hope, oh my God, I have ADD, as you can tell, but like, you know, as we talk more and more about your work, I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, you should do something in the Amazon. That would be so cool. Could you imagine you going there, like, because it's like endless possibilities, you know, with all the material there, it would be so, so amazing. But to circle back here right now where we are in the Silver Art Projects at the Four World Trade Center, how has this residency program been for you so far?
It is so wonderful. I mean, Gregory, who's the director, is just wonderful. He's sweet, supportive, always a champion of all of our work. There's 24 artists in the cohort, and it's a year-long residency, which means that we just get to hang out and support each other. We go to all of each other's openings and exhibitions and show up. They also bring in a lot of visitors, curators, directors, collectors, other artists to studio visits with us. And I have not talked to this many people ever before in my career in terms of like a professional angle. And I think that's one of the greatest benefits, is just how many conversations I'm having every day about my work and about other people. That is actually like, I don't know, it just makes you think more, and it brings in ideas that I may not have to begin with. But yeah, I've loved this experience. I've loved being here. I love both of these drawings have been made in the studio here.
Okay.
And so just having this beautiful light and being able to get into that meditative space and state has been wonderful.
That's so cool. And are you an artist that you like the interaction, like when you're working? Would you prefer to kind of like tune out the world, start your artwork, and then finish, or do you enjoy like that interaction from like different people, hearing what they see from your work?
I love the interaction. I feel like my work is made to be seen by all types of people. I don't make my work just for other artists or just for like books. I make it for people, and I feel like the goal of all my work is to move you and to allow you to experience yourself. So I'm very conscious in my work that you're looking at the work, but you're actually looking at yourself in a way that you get some kind of feeling of moment to just be able to be yourself. So yeah, my work is always made for people to experience.
That's amazing. It was definitely a self-reflection for me. And then how are you in the studio? Like when you come in, are you able to get to work right away, or do you need to like meditate, have a coffee, read a little bit, and then dive in, or are you able to just like jump in whenever you feel inspired?
I need my coffee.
A double espresso doesn't hurt, right?
I need like everything to be right. I need my coffee. I need my space to be clean and organized. It's funny because like I need everything to be very well organized so that I can do work that's very messy and chaotic. But I'm actually like a very organized person. Like all of my tools will be labeled. Everything needs to be like properly arranged in its place for me to really start working. But then once I start working, I'll make a mess.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. All right. Thank you so much for being with us, letting us come into your art studio. It's been such a pleasure hearing all about your work. Do you want to just share your Instagram and website so everybody can follow up and keep track of your creative process and future opening projects you may have?
I would love that. Yeah, my Instagram is Supermrin. That's SUPERMRIN. And my website is www.streetlight.space. That's STREETLIGHT.SPACE. And yeah, I'm very informal, so like feel free to reach out. And I do more stories than posts sometimes because it's nice of how they go away. Yeah. And I know social media has its challenges, but it also is such a nice way to connect with people. So I actually do use it quite a lot.
That's amazing. Thank you so much again. I had such an amazing time here listening to all of your work. Thank you so much again. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I loved talking with you today. And you two have this like incredible presence and calm. And I can tell that, yeah, you're like being in many different wonderful ways. It was like so wonderful to like just spend this time. Yeah. There's like a calmness in me now.
Thank you so much. Thank you
for listening to Tarik Talk. Follow Tarik Talk on all social media channels and check out the video interviews online.